Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Matthew Schreiner podcast. And in today's episode, we are going to be looking at Pope Leo's first homily as the Roman Pontiff from the Mass of the Cardinals. And one of his major points, in fact, in the words he uses, he talks about practical atheism. So that's the title of this episode. And by the way, I like this setup for now, and so we're going to be sticking with it. So that's how I have this video set up, and then that'll probably be how we have the next couple of videos set up. So I used NSCR's translation of his first homily, and so I will leave a link to it in the description. This here is a screenshot of the homily, and I will be using some screenshots of any text I'll be sharing from this blog, and I've got captions on here, so I won't be sharing too much of screenshots of the text, but you will see the article link. Before that, I would like to give special thanks to Father Brian Geary, pictured here. First of all, he actually told me that I should read the Pope's homily, and that was the morning of the Mass, and it took me until yesterday to finally sit down and read it. But the Pope's homily reminded me of points which Father Brian has made before in his homilies. In fact, Father Brian homilized, when the same Gospel is read, the Confession of St. Peter, and he also talked about the Pope's homily in both the homily from this Mass here, pictured in the pictures, and then he also used it in his Sunday homily. So I make mention of his homily or his thoughts in my commentary on the Pope's homily. I would also want to give another shout out. One of our theology teachers was wearing this shirt yesterday, and I want to give a shout out about it. I do plan on finding a shirt like this at some point. I enjoy all these Chicago Pope memes. The Pope Leo was born in Chicago. He spent a lot of his time, that is, as a bishop in Peru. But he is from Chicago, and I am here I'm from the Chicago area too, from the Midwest, from Illinois. He is also an Augustinian. I actually know someone who knows the Pope. He is the Augustinian Vocations Director for the Midwest Augustinians. In fact, he was up on the news talking about the Pope here in Chicago. He was actually at my grandfather's parish, that is Vocations Director, when the Pope was elected, and then he was at my parish for my sister's confirmation meeting, and he was talking about the Pope there too. Anyways, let's look at his homily. He began his homily speaking in English, as the article subtitle says. He began by reflecting upon the responsorial psalm of the day, or of that Mass, which was, I will sing a new song to the Lord because he has done marvels. And he reflected upon the fact that God has worked wonders in his life and the lives of the Cardinals, especially for him, as he begins his work in the Petrine ministry. So here's the beginning of his homily in English. And he begins by talking about part of the gospel from that day. You are Christ, the Son of the living God. Italian. It's part of his homily in Italian. You are Christ, the Son of the living God. And this is the confession that St. Peter makes about Christ when Christ asks him, who does Peter think that Christ is? I'm going to skip over a few things in his homily and get back to the main topic that I wish to share in this episode. This is one of the points that I like what Father Brian said in the article text here. In it, he talks about Caesarea Philippi, which, as Pope Leo says, is the place where the confession of St. Peter takes place. Father Brian points out that that the place Caesarea Philippi was a place filled with temples, with the worship of many different pagan idols or gods. And it was in the midst of this city with all its idols that Christ asks this question to Peter: who do people say that I am? And this brings us back in line with the point what Pope Leo was trying to make. How do we respond, and how does the world respond to this question, which Father Brian too has talked about? Because the question which Jesus asks to Peter, the principal question Jesus asks only to Peter, and then upon Peter's faith and answer he builds his church, is still a question asked to all of us in our lives. Who is Jesus? Father Brian, even on the Mass following the Pope's first Mass, spoke about the response that the world gives to Christ. And in similar words, Pope Leo says the same. The common response to the response of the world is merely to look at Christ as a great teacher, as a wise prophet, if not just another among a list of prophets. Pope Leo says, first, there is the world's response. Matthew tells us that this conversion between Jesus and the disciples takes place in the beautiful town of Caesarea Philippi, filled with luxurious palaces set in the magnificent natural landscape at the foot of Mount Hermon, but also a place of cruel power plays and the scene of betrayal and infidelity. This setting speaks to us of a world that considers Jesus a completely insignificant person, at best someone with an unusual and striking way of speaking and acting. And so once his presence becomes irksome because of his demands for honesty and his stern moral requirements, this world will not hesitate to reject and eliminate him. There is another possibility to Jesus' question, that of ordinary people. For them, the Nazarene is not a charlatan, but an upright man, one who has courage, who speaks well and says the right things, like other great prophets in the history of Israel. That is why they follow him, at least for as long as they can do so without too much risk or inconvenience. Yet to them he is only a man, and therefore in times of danger during his passion, they too abandon him and depart disappointed. And those are the words of Pope Leo in his homily, but they go very similarly to the words of Father Brian. Pope Leo continues, what is striking about these two attitudes is the relevance they embody notions that we could easily find on the lips of many men and women in our own time, even if, while essentially identical, they are expressed in different language. Even today, there are many settings in which the Christian faith is considered absurd, meant for the weak and unintelligent, settings where other securities are preferred, like technology, money, success, power, or pleasure. Pope Leo points out that this attitude is not foreign to Christians or to Catholics. Even those faithful can merely reduce Christ to another great spiritual leader, just another wise man, a leader but only like a superhero. And he says that Christians like this end up in nothing but practical atheism, which is what I want to talk about now. While researching a little about practical atheism, I saw this article from 2012 talking about practical atheism with Pope Benedict, who's pictured here in his audience. And most importantly, they quote Pope Benedict in saying, practical atheism is even more destructive than actual atheism because it leads to indifference towards faith and the question of God. This is from the conclusion of the article and talks about the importance of faith. But in reality, the Pope stated, faith concerns the truth about mankind and our eternal destinies. Faith is an encounter with God who speaks and acts in history and which converts our daily lives, transforming our mentality, systems of values, choices, and actions, he said. Faith is not illusions, escapism, a comfortable shelter, sentimentality, but involvement in every aspect of life and proclamation of the gospel, the good news which can liberate all of man. Yet, many people consider Christianity as a mere system of beliefs and morals instead of God's self-revelation in history, so that he could have a loving relationship with his creatures. Christianity, before being a moral or ethical value, is the experience of love, of welcoming the person of Jesus. Pope Benedict stated, calling on all Christians to learn better the faith they profess and purify their lives in conformity with Christ. And so that is from the CNA article right here. Practical atheism more destructive than this belief, Pope says, and that is from 2012 during the pontificate of Pope Benedict. We must understand first the danger of atheism, especially new atheism. I think Pope Benedict expressed this very well in his words. I think for most of you watching, you know a little bit about atheism. Quite simply, atheism is a complete rejection of, or a complete rejection of a or any deity. Atheists themselves can often be very smart and intellectual people. Atheism is not necessarily a faith of stupidity. Atheism does not also mean a lack of faith altogether, rather a lack of faith that a or any deity exists. Atheism is dangerous in the sense that it leads to death of faith in God, a rejection of him, and of ultimate salvation. Atheism is dangerous, as I said, and as Pope Benedict says. But the danger, too, is then in practical atheism. The danger is not living out our faith. That's the danger of practical atheism. Practical atheism is not a complete rejection of God like atheism. Rather, it is a rejection it is rejecting living out truly the faith. Within the pews of our church are those who fall into this category of practical atheism. Many who spend time in our pews every Sunday listening to the Word of God and sharing in his banquet of the altar. But yet outside of the church they hardly live out the faith, living in a state of practical atheism. It is not enough to take Peter's confession at mere face value, taking only these words upon our lips. Rather, it is taking those words and imprinting them on our hearts, making those words instilled within us, and allowing them, as the biblical canon puts it, to bear fruit. We must allow ourselves not to be merely Sunday Catholics, those who merely reside within pews, yet outside those pews do not live out the faith, but we must live out the faith daily in our lives, day to day. That's it for today. Have a blessed day.